got to be really careful about that self-talk that we're talking about to you all the time. How do you talk to yourself? Because you can talk yourself into doing nothing. You can talk yourself into doing everything. You can talk to yourself all the time. In fact, you do, whether you want to or not. You talk to yourself all the time. You better listen and find out where you are, and goal set to go beyond that. Go beyond, not to, but through. You take care of your goals all the way through the processes, the different processes that you have. Now, he's going to talk about some of these things that some of you have heard. I guess you may have heard all of us. I mean, from he and I and Leslie, you've heard a lot of what you're going to hear today, because it bears repeating. You need to, and I do, I need to repeat things that are good. I can tell you, I'm so thankful for what I've got and what I have had, and but I'm more thankful about an attitude that's going to extend to what I haven't had before. And I'm going to do it. And I'll start it by goal setting. Now, Dan has had he's had a lot of opportunities in his life, and he's made most of them happen with these opportunities. We have another opportunity right now that we're very excited about, and it involves a lot of the information that we're talking to you about. There's a company called the Pacific Institute that we got involved with long ago, and it's got a 40-year good track. I mean, they are good at their business. They have been. Well, the owner and the founder of that company, the Pacific Institute, is a gentleman called Lou Tice. And Lou happened to be his father-in-law. And for a while.
Yeah, that stuff's so good, I got out of it.
After a while, long enough for him to, to produce 3 of our grandchildren, they decided to call it quits. And they did. And they did. And he still stayed on with the Pacific Institute. He worked with the Pacific Institute for 18 years. Now, he first heard about them when he was about 11 years old. That's when I brought them in to my first head coaching job at the University of Wyoming to help us develop a language that everyone heard. Everyone that had anything to do with our football team, support people, staff, whether you were a manager, a trainer, or the head coach. It was information that everyone would understand. They didn't try to tell me how to coach, but they did tell us how to give our players and everyone else the best around, the best knowledge around. And he was with them for 18 years. He stayed on with them for 7 years after getting a divorce. And when he was given the full custody of his 3 children, he came back to Texas and came back to be with us we're so happy about that. Well, what's happened is this, that Lou Tice, the owner of the Pacific Institute, is having some real problems, physical problems. He's not going to be with us very long. And out of the blue, to us, he made a call and wants Dan to come back and take over the Pacific Institute. Now the Pacific Institute has put through their program 35 million people for 2 days at least of seminars. 35 million people in 62 different countries, 26 languages, and this is something that he could be. Lou Tice asked him to come be Lou Tice as a younger man, okay?
I said, no, he's
Only
too short.
You're better.
I'm kidding. Yeah, let's do the short version on this thing.
All right.
They want to know how to be their best. Now, I know you want to kind of affirm me, and I appreciate that. And I do have
Well,
the
wait
two
a
best
minute,
parents.
I'm not telling the good stuff.
Good short. Good short. I want to hit them with a couple of
All
principles
right,
here. And
we talked about this, and y'all don't want to hear me wander around. We're gonna let Dan, who's extremely organized. His mom beat it into him.
Yeah.
No, y'all all know Dan, and it's we're partners in everything that we do, and it's so it looks like we'll be going back to the Pacific Institute before we're not going to be gone, but our work will be through them.
so, you know, it's like your real estate opportunities. You've got the opportunity, it's at hand, and now you got to get it across the goal line. You got to close, you got to finish, right? And so, same with us. And we've got opportunity here in front of us, and it's global. It's a neat opportunity, but if you don't see self in the opportunity, you'll subconsciously, you don't do it on purpose, but you'll foul it up. You ever had that happen? You've worked on a deal so long, so much effort and time and energy, and then it just got... What happened to the opportunity, right? You gotta
I'll
be at your
tell
best.
y'all the rest of my talk the next time I'm here.
So, we want to seize that, but hang on just a second. We're tag teaming here a little bit. This is not traditional. You know we're very close. Leslie and I aren't kidding when we say we've got the two best parents in the world. We're not kidding. And the beauty of it is they always see more in us than we see in ourselves. And that kind of how I hope your parents were like that. And if you've got kids, I hope you see the same in your kids. See more in them than they see in self. And he's always had this philosophy, and he always says it. If I didn't have the ability in some area, if I didn't have, say, as much ability or strength in an area, the last person I'd hear that from would be who? He wouldn't be the first one telling me. He'd be the last one telling me I couldn't do it. Same with my mom. So I don't know how it is around your house. I don't know how it is around others in this organization. Or let's just go a little further. I wonder if it's like that in some of those that you compete against, some of these other offices that don't know or get exposed to the kind of coaching y'all get, to the kind of resources you get. Sheila, Beverly, all the support and help that you've got around here. You've got so much access to information and help and support, and I think you've got others that see more in you than oftentimes, unfortunately, we see in ourselves. And I know who you're competing against, they don't have that.
No, they don't.
No, they don't. And that's another reason why you recruit, I think. Knowing what you know, why wouldn't you be bringing them to the opportunity? It's just going to serve you. So, with Dad talking about being your best, yes, we are. We've got some exciting opportunities ahead of us. And it's fun for us to think about being a part of a global organization again. We were going to try to build it ourselves and just take a little longer. This is a quicker way of doing it. My ex-father-in-law has done some great things. And if you've been, have you heard of Lou Tice, some of you? Okay. And he's done some great things. And it's interesting to see the information that we're sharing with you today. And when I've come in here, when Dad's come in here and taught the curriculum, you got to know. We just met this morning up in Dallas, the past president of the YPO for 7 years. You know, 17,000 members. You familiar with YPO? You got to be 40 years or younger and do over $10 million in revenue a year. Okay? And he's the past president. He took them from 6,600 members to over 17,000. He had another company that he took from like 30 million in revenue, sold it, took it up to over 350 million in 3 years. He thinks differently. You know what he said had the biggest impact on him? The realization that I had more potential than I was using and to control my self-talk. He went through our curriculum 20 years ago. More than that. He said in the beginning of his career. Never long. He's a little older than me. What is 70? He went to Texas Tech. We won't hold that against him, but I can't remember what he said. Graduated in 76. So my point is, even though we talk some of the same information every time we're here, I'm just telling you, it's fundamentals. You can't be your best if you don't think of self in a very positive, constructive manner. You don't do as well on a deal if you're not looking for the good news in the deal or the people you're dealing with. So a couple of things. Just stay here for a second.
Sorry.
That's all right. Blushing. Go ahead.
Yeah.
That's funny.
There's so much happening so fast now. I mean, aren't things moving at warp speed?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Really, truly. There's so much going on all the time. And if you're not careful, you'll blink and a couple of years have gone by. Or you'll blink and you miss several opportunities because it's just happening so fast. So how can you be your best, perform at your best with all that going on? And part of it is with what Dad is talking about. I got to tell you a story. When I first went up to the Pacific Institute, this is in the mid-'80s. We're over in Honolulu, coming back. We went over to Australia, it's on our way back. We're taxiing out on the runway. And you know the runway, it gets hot over there in the summertime. And on the runway, right before we take off, you just start to feel the airplane get the nose off the ground. All of a sudden, you just hear this, you hear a blowout, right? You hear, like, it sounded like an explosion. And right before we took off, he just, boom, tucked it, and he goes right to the end. I thought we were going to go in the ocean. If you've been out there, you know what I'm talking about, right? And right at the end, he just turns it at the end and stops, and we come to a halt, and with all the poise and calmness, he says, well, looks like we had a flat tire. Flat tire? We almost died, are you kidding? And you know, if I'd have been up front flying the airplane, I'd have been like going, oh my gosh, we didn't. How could something in crisis, that could have been crisis, our lives could have ended, how could he have handled it with such poise, such calmness, where if you hadn't prepared, you might have been able to pull it off, but I doubt it. Because your anxiety levels have risen so far above their usefulness. And what he was able to do that caused it is he had practiced for it. Now you don't practice crashing, you always practice what? They're surviving, they're recovering. It's just like with race car drivers. When they're losing it, going into the wall at about 200 miles to the hour, where do you think they have the race car drivers look when they're going out of control into the wall? Where do they look? The recovery point. Now that takes some discipline and some practice. I don't know about you. I'd be looking at the wall. Ah! But they teach them when they're starting to lose control, they're going into the wall to look where they want to end up. Because they know their physiology is attached to the imagery. Does that make sense? Well, guess what? It's the same deal when you're dealing with a client. It's the same deal when you're recruiting somebody. It's the same when you're dealing with a real estate agent that you've heard about that somebody gave you the truth about. You know what I'm talking about. You know what? It's how you view them. What's your starting premise? How have you prepared for the situation? You don't want to take a casual look at building your business. It takes some real time to stop and imagine the ideal of how you want this deal to go. How do you want this conversation to go? How do you want this recovery to go? How do you want what you want to have happen in your life? And I'm telling you, it's just like what our meeting was this morning. The fundamentals of what we're talking about right now are the key ingredients that most executives in business today don't implement. And they don't even know what we're sharing with you, this simple stuff.